Hi, you're listening to Photofocus. My name's Rich Harrington, and this is the August 5th edition. Joining me this week is our co-host, Scott Bourne.
Hey, Rich. How's it going?
Good. It's good to catch up with you. I got a lot of good things to talk about. It's been a very active couple of weeks here with lots of stuff coming out on the software front, and it's looking to be a really busy fall. Lots of activities, lots of shooting opportunities coming up. I just wanted to jump right in. I had something really come to mind in the last couple of days. I was traveling internationally, and so I had my camera equipment, and I found myself sort of fluctuating. You know, as a person who does video, I'm used to schlepping a lot of gear, but on a long multi-day trip, I started feeling my age and wanted to pack really light, which I'm sure you can relate to as you get to...
Absolutely, given the fact that I have shoes older than you.
Yes. So I decided, well, you know what? I need to pack light. So I kind of flip from day to day. Like one day I'd pack a little bit heavy because I was shooting video and time-lapse and I wanted all... And then I'd go to the next day and I'd be super light. And it dawned on me that sort of this bipolar... Thinking about streamlining things down, we both probably have our essential gear. And I was just, I was on social media talking about some of my shooting, and people were really curious about what gear I was taking on which day. So I just wanted to dig in and talk about packing light. And why don't we start with you and go through a couple of things that you always take, even if you're packing light. What are some of those essential pieces of equipment that don't take up a lot of space that you would not leave out of your camera bag, even on a lightweight shooting day?
Well, first you have to understand, Rich, the way I approach this is a two-stage process. I think, no more than most of the people listening to our show would be satisfied with one lens. I'm not satisfied with one camera bag. Thus, I have about 50. But I use a series of bags. I use one bag that I call a getting to the destination bag. And then I pack another bag, which is completely empty inside my suitcase. And that's the walking around and doing the job bag. So I look at getting the gear to the destination as a different thing than actually working with it. So I have these bags that I use to get stuff out. Andy Biggs's bags is one of those bags, that will get a big lens out there and a lot of stuff that you can just carry to the theater, but it's not that great to work out of. I like a strap bag to work out of, so I'll use one of his bags maybe to get the gear to the theater. I never go anywhere without a tripod. Yeah. I've tried a couple of times. It's always a bad idea.
Well, I agree with you there, and I've got the same thing. I about a year ago, I invested in something that looks just like an airline carry-on bag. So, it looks no different than everybody else getting on the airplane, except, one or two times someone's like, this weighs 100 pounds. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of gear in there, but it looks just like a normal rolling bag. But you're right, it's terrible to work out of. So I actually found myself bringing two bags. I had one bag, which was a backpack that held probably 4 or 5 lenses, and I was able to lash a tripod on the back. And I agree with you. In almost all cases, I went out with my tripod. But there was a couple of times that I was really running and gunning. I had my kids with me. I wanted to be super mobile, and I was practically in tourist mode. And I went with a smaller bag even yet, just almost, I hate to say it, but the fanny pack style, just the belt bag around the waist.
Yeah, don't admit that. People are listening. Right?
I know, but it was manly. It was orange. Okay. It was from REI. It had like a security strap. But I went with just a monopod, and actually I was surprised that I was okay. I went shooting HDR with a monopod. Normally I'm a big tripod fan, but I was able to pull it off. Maybe it was the less caffeine. But I did find that was sort of the threshold. For like me, if I was going to try to be really light, the tripod, after you talked me into the Monster Enduro, while I love it, it's not traveling light.
Well, okay, keep in mind, I've got a couple of different Enduros. There's the big heavy one, which, does go out when I'm shooting video or using long lenses because they just need the support. But the smaller one can go pretty much anywhere. I am taking a look at some of the new Gitzo travel tripods that are very small. They're so compact that they would fit even in a backpack. I've seen a couple of folks over there at the Kelby Media Group playing with those. But you got to have a tripod. That's my main thing. And I'm bringing fewer lenses and fewer bodies on every trip. I'm about to go to Chicago to teach at Skip Summer School. We've got a couple of hands-on shooting things. I'm bringing the following gear. I'm bringing the smaller Enduro CT212 with the BH2 ball head, which is the big ball head. I'm bringing the Canon 1DX body. I'm bringing the 40 millimeter pancake, the 24 to 70, the 70, the 200, and the 8 to 15 zoom. So only 4 lenses, but also a 1.4 teleextender. And I'm bringing, like all the associated stuff that goes with that, and some extension tubes in case I need to do macro. All that will fit in a think tank airport addicted European version bag that would fit on even a smaller plane. I can get all that stuff in there, and then the tripod goes in my checked bag. And and I always take the ball head off the tripod now and put that in a separate box, also in the check bag, because I found that a couple of times when I put it in there, they try to take it apart, and all the knobs and stuff would be laying.
Yeah, they don't really understand. They're like, "What's this? Let's play with it." Yeah.
So there's I spent an hour trying to reassemble my ball head, which of course takes precision machinery, and so I take it off, and then for some reason, if it's not on the tripod, they decide it's not a threat. But if it's on the tripod, it's a threat. It boggles the mind to try to think like a TSA agent, but I put the tripod in a separate bag. So that's, for instance, going to be a fairly typical setup for me. That will cover a lot. Now, if I'm going out doing wildlife, I'm going to have to throw in one of Andy Biggs's bags, and we're going to throw in the new Canon 2 to 400, which I should have pretty soon, the 500, the 600, and the 800, those kinds of lenses.
Yeah, but that's not traveling light. But you need that distance. Yeah, I found myself falling into sort of two camps. I went out with a single lens, and when I did that, I went with the D7000 and the 28 to 300 millimeter lens.
Great combo. Great.
I was just a total tourist, but it was great. I mean, I was getting good pictures. I was very happy with the distance I had, and it was just super flexible. And then I found myself shooting some time lapse, so I did travel with the tripod, and I just took my 35 millimeter, my 80 millimeter, and I was using the 80 millimeters for portraits, and I was using the 35 millimeter to just get a little bit more coverage. Now, the big thing that I absolutely regretted not doing on one day, and I learned my lesson, and I now swear by it, is I never go out with less than 3 batteries, because it's just amazing how you're not paying attention, and you're like, all of a sudden, you're out of juice. And you want to stop shooting when you run out of energy, not when your camera runs out of power.
Yeah, if you're doing a lot of time-lapse and video, Rich, probably good for us to mention that those two activities consume battery power like I consume Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, and but to that point, one of the things I did do is I turned off the live view review feature. I said, you know what? I don't need my live view monitor popping up. I'll just, when I want to check the shot, I'll push the button. But I found myself staying more in the moment and just shooting, and spent less time chimping and looking at the back of the camera because it was popping up a picture every couple seconds.
Yeah, so, most of the high-end modern cameras, I can get by on a battery a day unless I'm doing a lot of video. But having an extra battery sure does help. It depends on what system you're using. Of course, some of the batteries have much higher capacity than others. But yeah, having extra batteries, having plenty of compact flash cards, all the basics, you got to have all that stuff. But if you would have known me 10 years ago, Rich, when we sent crates of gear, like as in the guy with the little machine that goes beep, 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 would pick it up and put it on the plane. I went my last Alaska trip. I took I had borrow lenses ship up a box, and I took a couple of boxes. The trip 3 years before that, we had 11 crates.
Wow.
And so I've learned my lesson. I'm going lighter. Now, I do have to admit that for a while there, I was going really light with like the pen cameras and the Leica M9s. But I might as well break the news here now, because it's going to be controversial no matter what I do. But I have fallen in love with the Canon 1DX, and that's pretty much the only camera you'll see me using now.
It's a great camera, and it definitely, it's amazing what you can get by with. Now, with that said, I'm still glad on the trip itself I brought 2 camera bodies, because I definitely wanted that spare. The other piece of equipment I was real happy with is I brought an R-strap with me, and I've played with them before, but I just revisited. I recently picked up a new one. There's other brands out there, but this just got the camera in a much more comfortable position for the day. The fact that it was on the hip and it wasn't just hanging around the neck pulling down. I love this type of shoulder strap. Now, do you use something like that, or do you have another strap that you like?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I had a pretty negative experience with the first R strap. I lost a Nikon camera to it. So I'm a little leery of those. I like them around my neck. To tell you the truth, I mean, I got so many straps, I just tend to grab one. But I work on a tripod so much, Rich, that I'm most of the time strapless.
I just had a bad vision there, Scott. So
I know I said that. I said that in such a careful way as to make sure to engender that. Yes, I go strapless because you don't want the strap flapping around in the wind on the tripod and all that kind of stuff. And I like and I am going to just use this opportunity to jump in and tell you about something I think you're going to be pretty excited about that I'm taking to Chicago to test, and that I'm never going to leave anywhere but in my camera bag. Have you heard of the lens skirt?
No. Oh, but between that and strapless, this is going down to tubes.
We're starting to go a little crazy, aren't we? Okay, so when you get like the great hotel room in Vegas,
yeah,
and you can't open the window, of course, and you stick your camera right up against there to shoot the time lapse, and then you look at the product and you go, "Damn, I had all the lights turned off and everything, but there's still a bunch of reflections, right?"
Yeah.
Well, this thing is brilliant. You stick your lens through it. It's a black material that's flexible with 4 suction cups that actually stick to the window that creates a skirt. It just sort of blocks out all the light that comes, the ambient light that comes from behind the camera, and you can shoot through a window with this thing and never have to worry about that. So I'm going to be doing time lapses in Chicago with one of these.
Okay, so do you know the URL or where to find that? Because I'm afraid to type lens skirt into a Google search.
Actually, I think it's a Kickstarter project, to tell you the truth. I got one of the first ones, so I don't know anything about it other than they just sent it to me, and it's the coolest looking thing I've ever seen for time-lapse because, I always go through all this trouble. I turn off all the lights, I wear a black outfit, and I still see reflection. It drives me crazy. This thing has got a little hole that you put your lens through, and then it's a flexible material. The whole thing folds up to the size of a handkerchief. It's brilliant. I mean, it's not going to take up any room in the bag. This is going on every trip with me.
All right. Yeah, you're going to have to send me that link because that's definitely going to be something I buy.
Yeah, you definitely are going to want one of these. And the other thing, now that I'm shooting Canon, unfortunately, I have to bring one of those interlevel meters. I can't say
yes, that. Intervalometer.
Thank you. I now that that's the one thing that I have to make sure to throw in the bag all the time, and I really hate it. I prefer the Nikon method; it's built in, but that's just the way it goes. That's the one thing I had to give up in the 1DX. And believe me, I would be taking a second 1DX to Chicago, except for one thing: I've got the only one in the United States, practically. So
yes, and he'll be flying the following flight if you'd like to go ahead.
They're all at the Olympics now. As soon as the Olympics is over and Canon releases some more, I've already got a second one on order. But I'm running on one body, but if all else fails, I've got my Samsung S3, which takes pretty darn good 8-megapixel pictures.
Well, let's talk actually about a couple more pieces of equipment. I think that's great for packing light, and that gives some people some ideas on how to be mobile. I got a new piece of equipment in today that I'm just testing. Red Rock Micro, that makes different camera cages. These are often used for video, but they have different purposes. They sent over some really cool camera body cages so you can mount a DSLR in, and then it has a whole bunch of attach points, so if you need to put things like accessories, so those people shooting video who want to attach a light or a microphone. So I thought they're very cool. I'll post some thoughts on them soon, but very solid stuff, and it's just interesting how the ergonomics of the camera are changing, and I just found that for a lot of folks, this is giving them other ways of shooting. Now, when I did travel and I had my tripod with me, I got a lot of grief for having a tripod. I was surprised. I don't know. I was down in Panama, and between the airlines and everywhere I went, everyone just looked at the tripod like it was some military piece of equipment, like I must have a tank or a Gatling gun I was going to be taking out. So have you run into this? Are tripods just universally...
Yeah, here's the thing. I mean, if you're flying a commercial first class, you can bring anything you want on the plane. Nobody says anything to you. If you're not flying first class, then they give you the stink eye on the tripod. But the way I've just, my equipment's insured. The way I've dealt with this, Rich, is I put it in the suitcase if I'm bringing it. And frankly, more than now, 80 or 90% of the cases, I just have borrow lenses, ship tripods to the location I'm going to, because it's just so much easier, even though I own several. Shipping tripods is good. Now, when it comes to video stuff, the other problem is I've got sliders, and those are also unwieldy and difficult to pack. And I bought the little Philip Bloom one, which is very expensive. but works very well. And, but by the time you bring the head and the slider and the little machine that powers it, if you want to do motion, I mean, that takes a crate. I mean, the bottom line is we should have taken up stamp collecting, where all you need is eyeglasses and tweezers.
Yes, simpler hobbies. Well, I found two things. One was I still got grief with the tripod even off the airplane, but as a family man traveling, I decided, hey, you know what?
Let the wife carry it.
No, not the wife. The 8-year-old son. Nobody
go.
gave him grief about carrying a tripod.
There are places like Butterfly World in Florida where they've got like 100 old ladies with binoculars staring at you just to make sure you don't have a tripod. And let's see, it can be a reasonable concern. If you're one of those guys that throws your tripod up in the middle of the busiest sidewalk on 42nd Street in New York, you deserve to get some grief. If you use your tripod judiciously and you're not in anybody's way, I don't think it should be anybody's business. But I tell you what, it is the difference between getting, jammed up, for instance, in Vegas by the Homeland Security and not. If you got a tripod, you must be a terrorist. So, having things like these camera cages, I think that could solve the problem for some people, but the bottom line is just nothing like a tripod. I saw, our good friend RC Concepcion from Kelly Media wrote a whole post on this at Google Plus today, and I thought to myself, man, I couldn't agree more. Each and every time, without exception, that I have not had a tripod, I've regretted it. Now, there is one caveat. When you got a 1DX, you can shoot 14 frames a second. And you can pull 3 HDR shots out of the middle 14 and probably be okay handheld.
Yeah. Well, to that end, one last thing before we toss to a commercial. I actually dropped in one of those new SDXC cards that, and I don't know if the Canon has that. I know that the Nikon I'm playing with, the D800, had the support. Right. And I was floored at the continuous shooting speed. Like, I just held down the plunger on continuous high, and it went for like a minute and a half before it started buffering. I was like, wait a minute, I'm shooting continuously like 8 to 12 frames a second for a minute and a half, and it hasn't locked up yet. It hasn't even slowed down yet.
I get it. Yeah, the D4 and the D800, this is the one advantage they have over the 1DX, is that they have a larger buffer, and that card is part of it. Now, the problem is that even the people who are part of the standards committee of those cards have bailed out of the standards. So I'm not sure how far that's going to go. The 1DX just has 2 CF cards and plenty of buffer for me on the 2 CF cards. I'm happy with it. But yeah, those new cards, when I got my first D4 to test, I took it up to Alaska. I just sat there and leaned on the button for like a half hour, and I swear the buffer never filled up. It was bizarre.
Yeah, you're just like, really? But I mean, I put in a normal high capacity card and no big deal. But the SDHC is just amazing, but it's got all these labels on it. So if you do look at that technology, it says very adamantly, if you put this in a camera and it gives you a card error, don't reformat because you blow away the software that it needs. So it's really easy to screw those cards up. Now, we were talking about tripods, we were talking about shipping gear, traveling light. Scott, you got a good recommendation for folks if they're going to be taking a trip or they just want to try out some gear to make things a little easier?
BorrowLenses.com. I mean, I own this stuff. I own almost everything we're talking about. And even when I own it, I still have them rented to me. I get it from them because, you know what? Opening it at your hotel is a whole lot easier than getting it through that machine that they make you raise your hands up in, and they spin you around and they put little things to make sure you don't have bombs on at the airport. I mean, it's just so much easier, but not just tripods. We're talking things like, sliders and big old huge hot lights and whatever you can think of. I just rented from them the Pro Photo ring light and their 2400 watt pack. I mean, this thing comes in a box that's 4 feet tall. It's a big Mondo, big, beautiful ring light. It's not like a cheap little $200 thing you put on a flash. And I got to tell you, trying to carry that through an airport with the amount of cords and the kind of cords that go to it, I'm sure I'd be up against the wall. So yeah, use places like BorrowLenses.com to solve some of those problems. And you're right, trying things out. If you do just decide you want to buy them, we also have an Amazon link that you can visit at the Photofocus.com site. You won't pay a penny more than you would pay if you went there on your own, but you will help support the show and make it possible to hear the Photofocus podcast on the 5th, the 15th, and the 25th of each and every month.
Well, actually, we're talking about cords and all those cables, and I think it's time. We haven't had one in a while. I was reading your 5 things I want camera companies to stop doing now, and I started adding to that list myself. But I think it's time that we have a good old rant for just a couple minutes, and I'm going to keep an eye on the clock here. We're going to keep this to less than an 8-minute rant. And I'll do my best. But I think you had some great things. But I'm going to throw out one here that really came into play. And you had this on your list too. And that was, how many different ports and connectors can we have? It's like I was playing with a bunch of different cameras. I started packing my bag. And I'm like, okay, I got the USB 3 cables, the USB 2, the HDMI, the micro HDMI, the mini HDMI, the HDMI to mini HDMI adapter, the FireWire. Oh, now my MacBook Pro, I've got a gigabit to Ethernet and a FireWire to, I'm sorry, the Thunderbolt to FireWire and Thunderbolt to Ethernet. And it's like I'm looking at these things and I lay them all out, and I have like 70 different cables and adapters in this bag. And part of it's because I always travel with 2 of everything, because one will invariably break and then you're just freaking screwed. But how many different connection options do we need?
Apparently 426,296,308.
Well, what drives me nuts is it's this idea that, like, so we had HDMI, right? And that was fine. And then they said, oh, well, to make the cameras smaller, we're going to have this mini HDMI port. Okay, fine. You know, it steps down to a smaller one. There's some easy adapters. Well, now they had to come out with 2 even smaller than that. And it's like, you know what? I don't need the camera to be so thin that it's 3 credit cards thick, that I want you to put these cheap, flimsy micro ports that if you just happen to blow on the cable, it snaps off and cracks the port off. Why can't we have decent sized ports with decent cables?
Well, I'm with you, but here's the thing. My biggest complaint, and I'm going to hit Olympus, and everyone knows I love Olympus. I gave them Camera of the Year last year for the EP3. But my God, a proprietary cable to download the firmware from. You can't even go with a standard USB cable that we could at least find. And hello, I mean, everybody else does it on a compact flash card. This is the real problem, is that, you know, they want you to buy their $12 cable. Okay, here's an idea. Just charge me freaking $12 more for the camera and build in a regular USB port, please.
Yeah.
Just make your $12 honestly.
Yeah.
Don't jimmy me into this kind of now. Well, and we haven't even begun to talk. You know, iPhone 5, my friend.
Oh yeah.
All those iPhone 1 through 4 connectors you got, throw them away.
Yeah, I'm seeing those pictures, and what I'm wondering about is I'm trying to decide if they really did have to give in. The European Union came out with a standard saying that they had to use the I even forget what the flavor of the USB is, but it's the micro USB that all phones had to standardize on this. So in their defense, they might have had to have switched, but I'm not sure if they came out with another cable that's not USB based and it's yet another version of the Apple dock, for the same reason that I now had to have additional adapters to go from my old MacBook laptop power supply to a step down adapter to make it even thinner, so they could, you know, the old one was just too thick for the new MacBook Pro, so we had to make a thinner power cable. Come on. Yeah, one more thing to lose, one more thing for you to be sitting there going, it's dead in the water. It's just amazing. So that's fine, and I'm sure our people can relate. Here's another one, though, that just irks me, and it was number 1 on your list. And I know why it's number 1, because it's what, when people go to the camera store and they're at their big box retailer, they're like, yep, this one's got 97 megapixels. It's far better than last year's model that only had 93. Why? How many people who are buying those cameras even knows the definition of what a megapixel is?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I got lambasted by the usual link baiters and haters for, you know, saying the D800 shouldn't have 36 megapixels, and a bunch of landscape photographers who decided apparently they're now portrait photography experts told me I was wrong, that portrait buyers don't want to see each and every pore in their face. You know, blown up. If you're shooting for billboards, you need those 36 megapixels. If you're shooting for the web, well, I'm not uncashing all those checks I got for the 3.3 megapixel portraits I shot with my first Canon digital camera. I'm sorry. I absolutely positively think it was a mistake. I stand by that. I think there are exceptions. If you want to shoot a lot of macro, then yeah, get the D800E and get tons of detail. Or if you're shooting for billboards, a very large format. But we know that from all the surveys we've done, 90% of our audience doesn't even make a print, a 4x6 print. They don't need that kind of resolution, and the physics are physics. You can make up any story you want on the internet, but up is still up, down is still down, right is still right, left is still left, black is still black, white is still white, and physics cannot be cheated. And if you cram 36 million light sensors onto a little device that used to have 12, you're going to give something up, period. Anyone who says different, they're just lying.
Well, why can't we have the ability to adjust this? Now, when you're shooting Canon gives you the ability for some different size RAW files. Is it just discarding the information and downsampling, or is it changing how the sensor's being used?
You know, basically what they're doing, all these companies are now using these backlit sensors, which are very cool. The Olympus OMD uses it too. But here's the problem. What if they were just to go ahead and use that cool technology and all those processing tricks and still keep it where it was? Wouldn't we get just even better image quality out of a 12 megapixel sensor? See, that's what bugs me. You know, you're getting great. I mean, listen, I got a D700. It produces beautiful photographs that have been blown up very large and hung in people's homes. I never once thought, damn, wish I had 36 megapixels. In fact, I had never in my life have said, damn, I wish I had 36 megapixels for anything. You don't need it. Now, what's going on here is the marketers are out of ideas. Let's see, we sold them megapixels. We ran that as far as we could. Then we threw video on. And then, well, now we got no other ideas, so we'll go back to megapixels.
Well, here's what I don't understand, which is I find interesting, is that they seem to be running with this mentality that you have to keep buying new camera bodies. And I don't know, are the margins that much better on camera bodies? Why not just do a campaign on teaching people the value of buying good glass and new lenses? I mean, I spend a lot more money on lenses than I do on camera bodies over time. It just seems like this would be a better investment. You know, we've got great cameras like the Micro Four Thirds having lots of interchangeable lenses. We've got the opportunity here. People are starting to get smart and see the value of different types of lenses for situations. Is it that the average consumer just buys a body and buys a lens, and then when they're done, they hand it off to grandpa or their cousin or their sister, and then they buy a new body and a lens, and it's a 1-to-1 ratio, and the only driving factor is the megapixel? Or, I mean, I guess what's the problem here? Are lenses just not selling?
No, it's just, again, it's poor marketing. It's lazy marketing is what I want to say. And, you know, there's enough. Here's the real thing that I think people are missing. And there's a lot of talk on the web today as we record the show about this. And I've been saying this for years. Way back when the Canon 5D series came, we had full frame sensors. I started doing my own testing. And I mean, I'm not talking like pixel peeping testing with, you know, the telescopes and trying to make sure I can't see a pixel. I'm just talking about good old-fashioned newspaper edge-to-edge resolution test, the kind we did for 20 years. Throw a polarized light on it, see where the fall-off is, see where the sharpness is. And I was noticing that the sensors were outperforming the lenses, Rich. And unless you had L glass on the Canon side, for instance, you weren't even able to really take advantage of these full-frame sensors because there simply were more horizontal line pairs of resolution available on the sensor than there were from the glass. The glass wasn't providing it. Now, you take the 1DX, for instance. You look at the 5D Mark III, for instance. These cameras autofocus extremely well with the new fast lenses. But if you've got an older lens, you're not going to see the improvement. You might see a modest improvement, but the lenses, you've got to keep up with the lenses too. So really it's become a vicious circle of no longer is it just you need new glass. You need new bodies and new glass if you want the best of everything. But I still think that all of these cameras and all these lenses outperform most photographers. Most people aren't even getting close to what the maximum capacity of their existing camera is. I do think you should focus on glass, though. I think in the long run, if you're using a 10-year-old body with the very fastest, best new glass, you're still going to come out ahead if you inverse that.
All right. And the last rant that I had, and I've been playing with a lot of middle ground cameras that have features. But one of the things I've noticed is that manufacturers will roll out features in their point and shoots and in their micro four thirds, and then those make it over to the DSLR line next. Like, we had video on cameras long before it showed up on a DSLR, and then, oh my gosh, DSLR video. So one of the trends I'm seeing is just this incredible bloatware of in-camera software. I'm okay with the in-camera HDR if you're a JPEG shooter to help extend the dynamic range, just like I use the in-camera HDR on my iPhone all the time. And I'm okay with time-lapse, and I've seen some interesting ones where you hold the trigger down and you just pan the camera and it stitches an in-camera panorama. These are all fun and open things up to people, but it's getting crazy. I literally was testing a camera the other day that had facial recognition, not just for people, but separate facial recognition for a cat and a dog. And it was a separate menu item. Cat recognition, dog recognition. It would fire the shot when your cat or your dog, you had to choose the right setting, was looking at the lens. Do we need this crap?
Well, no, but I do think that, it depends on what cameras you're talking about, Rich. I think on the prosumer and pro cameras, we don't need any of it. I think that when you're talking about the point and shoots and stuff, people do need help focusing. There is a very cool feature with the Olympus cameras that not only focuses on the face, it focuses on the eye. And I think that's valuable. But all these various scene modes and stuff, if you're shooting JPEGs and you're posting stuff to Instagram and nobody but your grandma sees your pictures on your website, all that stuff's fun and fine and probably valuable. You and I think the level of our audience in particular know the best way to do it is to shoot it as straight and clean in the camera as you can, bring it into a post-processing program like Photoshop or Lightroom, where you can infinitely improve it and not be stuck with whatever in-camera processing you're offered. But the one thing, unless you're using a Lytro, that you can't fix is an out-of-focus picture. So I do think that it seems to me that it is a good idea to maybe these ideas with facial recognition are cool, but they're still kind of iffy on some of the cameras. The ones on the Olympus, I can tell you, work really well.
Yeah, no, I've been happy with some. The Olympus software seems to be the most aggressive at moving things forward. I loved their panoramic and their HDR processing. It definitely worked. Now, to just hammer home a point that you brought up there, and I run into this with a lot of people who are dissatisfied with their photography. I talk to a lot of folks who go out and they've dropped their first, let's say $1,500 or on up, buying a camera body and a lens kit, an entry-level DSLR, or even up to $3,000. And they're just like, my pictures don't look like yours. How are those skies so rich? How did you get that dynamic range? I'm like, raw. Oh, that's too much work. I'm like, wait, you just spent $1,500 or $3,000 and you can't be bothered to do 20 seconds of developing on a picture you want?
And with the new, listen, there are so many sites, again, to reference our friends at Kelby Media Group, which, by the way, if you look at any of the posts on photofocus.com, you can get a $20 off code to use to sign up for a year of Kelby training, and you should, because it's some of the best training out there, and it includes Rich's training. But if you look at like what Matt Klaskowski does with his Lightroom site, he gives away oodles, and I mean oodles, free of charge. Not a penny will it cost you, presets. So you can do one button stuff that makes it look like it was shot in the movie 300, or it has lens flare, or it's HDR, faux HDR. You don't even have, you can be lazy. You don't even have to learn the science behind it. You just get Matt's free presets and away you go. And there's a bunch of other free preset sites. So it's not like this is hard, and it's not any harder. In fact, I think it's easier. I think it's harder to go through the nested menus on some of these compact cameras and find the flower scene mode than it is, to find a Lightroom preset that'll do the same thing.
Well, I don't know if you saw the time-lapse I posted. I put a time-lapse up from Panama that I was really happy with. The boat coming all the way in, lowering down, and pulling out from the canal. But it was tough lighting. What I didn't show you yet was what it looked like in camera. Like the original file, it was such tough exposure, but the HDR was beautiful. It looked like pseudo HDR, but it was all done with just a raw file, a single file. The clarity, the color, the vibrance, the black levels, it just saved the shot. And I see people struggle. And I just finished the new edition of my Photoshop book. It just came out, like they arrived 2 days ago. And I put a lot of emphasis on RAW this time through, because one of the things that really dawned on me as I started looking at the techniques and seeing where people were moving to is that if I write how to fix a problem like an overblown sky, and you're working with a JPEG, it's like, okay, first we're going to select the sky, then we're going to refine the selection, then we're going to add this adjustment layer, and then we're going to decide it's not good, so we're going to mask it out, and then we're going to put a new sky in, and then we're going to blend it, and then we're going to layer this, and then we're going to color correct, and then it's like, if it's camera raw, it's like, so we open up the image, we click auto, we drag the vibrance slider up, and then we drag the highlight slider to the left, and hey, look, it's beautiful. It's like, why won't people evolve? So all of you out there who's saying, oh, just shut up already, we shoot raw, you are the smart ones. But you know what? I still think you're the minority. I've been to camera stores. I've been speaking to people at different events. I would still say that I think 75% of the people taking pictures on cameras that could shoot raw are not shooting raw.
Well, I shoot RAW almost all the time. There are exceptions and a few very well-known pros that have legitimate exceptions. Jerry Guionis is arguably the best wedding photographer in the world. He's a guy who's spent a lot of time with film and knows exactly how to get what he wants out of the camera. He doesn't have to retouch. In fact, doesn't even use Photoshop or any post-processing. His images go straight from the camera to the album company most of the time. He does get a little help from a third party if he thinks he needs it. But he has to shoot so many shots, and the time involved in processing the RAW for somebody that's shooting thousands of pictures becomes an issue. Same when I shoot motorsports. That's the one time I shoot JPEG, because I might shoot 10,000 images. I really don't want to take the time to process the RAWs. I've got too many pictures. But other than those very few exceptions, or somebody who's going straight, for instance, like if you're a press photographer and you're shooting a baseball game and the stuff's coming straight off your card right onto the wire service, there's no time to do RAW. But for the hobbyist, for the artist, for the average person who doesn't shoot thousands of pictures a day, yeah, for goodness sake. I mean, Adobe Camera Raw is so good now, Rich, that I can do 95% of all my post-processing in ACR before going anywhere else. And the last 5% is just a little touch-up in one of the other programs. I can do 95% of it now in ACR. It's crazy how good it is.
Yeah, you're right, Scott. I mean, RAW has just gotten so good. I would throw out, though, I mean, I shot time-lapse a lot on this trip. Several thousand pictures of particular scenes. Obviously there's a lot of unification, but people forget how easy it is to just select one photo in your burst and then, open up 20 pictures that were shot at the same location when you're shooting action, color correct one, and then just synchronize your settings across Camera Raw, and then all the pictures are updated. It's so easy to do that sort of sync.
The problem is for people like Tamerlaki, who shoots JPEG, and Jerry Guionis and a few others, is that they aren't in a constant shooting situation. They're with a bride in the church, which has got very warm lighting and stuff from, the windows is all specially colored and all that kind of stuff. Then they run outside in the bright daylight. Then they run into a reception room with tungsten. They're not able to be consistent. And for instance, in a motorsports race, we're following cars all the way around the track. On one side of the track, it's 12 stops brighter than the other. And so, sometimes that doesn't work, but I agree. For things like time-lapse, it's easy to do RAW, and it's getting easier. All you have to do is batch process. Like I say, 98% of the time these days, I'm shooting RAW. It's gotten so easy, and I'm frankly just in love with the Adobe Camera Raw converter these days. I just did a recent comparison, which I published on Photofocus, where I did an ACR conversion of the same exact image from a 5D Mark III and an aperture one, and the aperture one was just like really noisy by comparison, straight from the camera, and using apertures, and believe me, everyone knows for a long time I've been an aperture proponent, but using its most aggressive built-in noise reduction, I couldn't even come close to like the built-in Lightroom reduction at maybe 20%, and the Lightroom noise reduction retained all the detail, whereas the aperture didn't. So you can use combination of 3 or 4 things in ACR now. The clarity slider kicks butt, period. You mix that with the proper use of highlight and shadows, a little bit of noise reduction, some vibrancy. You're 95% there if you know how to make a decent exposure.
Oh yeah, and then I know it gets overused, but the post crop vignette just to help do a little power window is also a nice thing. So yeah, absolutely. Well, let's take a quick moment, Scott, to thank a couple more of our sponsors who let us bring the show, and then I got one more roundup topic here to wrap the show up with.
Well, a couple of people you should know about ViewBug. If you want to share photos, win prizes, enter contests, that's where you do it, viewbug.com. And by the way, if you search ViewBug Photofocus Contest, you can still enter our contest, which has more than $10,000 worth of prizes. And there's no entry fee for that. And we don't take any copyrights from you. And we don't even use your pictures unless you win. You check that out. There's a banner on the front page at photofocus.com if you want to click through. And then the other folks I want to mention are SmugMug. If you want to sell your pictures, this is the best solution I believe that's online. And I also still think it's the best video hosting solution I found. All of the Photofocus videos that you see Rich do or me or anybody else on the site are hosted there at SmugMug. The video quality is stunning. It's fast to upload. It's now even easier to customize SmugMug than it's ever been before. So check that out. So ViewBug and SmugMug, we appreciate your support.
Great. And speaking of SmugMug, at Photoshop World coming up, which both you and I are speaking at, I believe we're going to have a get-together around that?
Yeah, we're still working out the dates and the details with Mr. Kelby, but we hope to have you speak, and I'll speak a little at a special free SmugMug meeting. If we do it the way we did last year, and this is still not yet confirmed, so hold your horses a little bit, but last year Scott was kind enough to give everybody that came to the Smug, which is about 100 people, a free show floor pass. So they could get in and see the exhibits there at Photoshop World. We're hoping to repeat that, and if we can't, we have a studio nearby that we'll bring you into, and we'll do a little thing where you can show off some more Adobe Photoshop tips and probably some Lightroom tips this time.
Well, and what I'm hoping for, and I don't know if people notice this, but those of you that are on Adobe Creative Cloud, they actually, when they added Lightroom to Creative Cloud, they put some new features in that weren't in the boxed version, so there was some updates. And one of the things Adobe has been strongly hinting at is that new features for the next version of these major apps will start to trickle out early into Creative Cloud. So I'm optimistic that at Photoshop World we might have some new things to see. I don't know for a fact, but I'm optimistic.
Now wait a minute. If I got Lightroom before they put it in Creative Cloud, do I need to re-download it from Creative Cloud to get that?
I would, because one of the advantages that a lot of folks don't realize, like when you buy boxed software, there's a time limit as to how long they can add new features. It's tied to crazy tax laws, just like those same crazy tax laws that affected how long the DSLR could record video. You name it, there's a silly law. So with this, what they have stated is that they will be releasing new features for some of the apps before they ship the boxed versions next year sometime. So the Creative Cloud members will get updates first. And cool. And so it's kind of cool. So I'm really looking forward to that because the stuff I hear sounds good, and we always love new features. Now, speaking of software, let's do a quick software roundup. I got 3 tools I want to talk about. The first is, both you and I are dabbling with it, Mountain Lion. And I must say, I had played with the developers build a little bit. We got a developer's license at our shop because we do some software development too. The shipping version finally came out. I've been reading the articles. There's all these great articles on the net about all these little features. One of the things I found is that a lot of the things I hated about Lion, they kind of quietly undid. Like, wow, the calendars actually work again, and all those little things they took and hid are back, and there's lots of little subtle improvements. So if you liked Lion, you'll definitely like Mountain Lion because it's better. And if you hated Lion, I think you'll like Mountain Lion a lot better because they quietly undid and fixed a bunch of stuff that they broke.
Well, I mean, I really hated the calendar under Lion. It never worked for me. I could never get it to sync up. I had Apple experts out the wazoo trying to help me. Today is the first. We just took one of our many Macs, and today is the first day we allowed Mountain Lion on. I wanted to wait a few days. We've done a few very preliminary tests. Photoshop opened fine, all the browsers open fine. The one thing I've noticed is all the browsers now ask for permission to use your contacts, which is new.
Almost every app does. Yeah, they put a lot of apps access your contacts to like get your email and stuff for like registration or to send in a report of who's accessing it. But yeah, there's a lot more security stuff in Mountain Lion because Apple finally sort of admitted, oh yeah, now that we're so popular, lots of people are trying to write viruses for our OS.
The thing I really like so far is the dictation deal. It really works. I open up a notepad document or text edit, and I just start talking, and I swear it's like 98% effective. I like the little icon in the top right corner that lets you click open your calendar and says, oh, you're supposed to be recording Photofocus with Rich right now. I like that. I haven't really delved into a whole lot of the features because we just did it today. But the good news is nothing crashed. Everything seems to function that used to function. And things, I don't know, maybe it's my imagination, but things seem a little snappier to me, Rich.
Yeah, it is faster. And a lot of the kludgy problems I was having with Lion are fixed. So it was very clear that they wanted to get to the next OS. There are even more things that make it like an iPhone, so that notification center is one of them, although I like it. About the only thing I dislike is how they're now doing the control panel for monitor resolutions, especially if you have one of the Retina displays. It's kind of like optimal. More screen, less screen. I'm like, wait, I need to know the dimensions of my screen. Today I was trying to do something weird, like send out an actual video signal, and it was like I plugged in the cable, and there wasn't the preset of like, oh, send out 720p for the TV set or 1080p. It was like, would you like it optimized for your laptop or for the external display? And then I choose optimized for the external display, and then it's like, oh, it's 1080p. I'm like, wait, where's my choice? It's like,
yeah, this is bizarre. It says best for built-in display or scaled. And then, but when you click scale, then you get the option to do 1440, 1280, 1152. I think it's still the same, Rich. I just think it's weird the way they word it. You got to click that scaled button.
Yeah, they're hiding it more, much like many of the things on the iOS. There's definitely a shift in Apple. Apple used to be an operating system that was for creatives and a lot of power users, and now it's becoming the operating system for everybody, including your grandma. And they're definitely scaling some things back. So there's a lot of good things in there, but there's a lot of things that they're hiding from you. Just like, the same thing that bugged me with Lion. It's like, where's my save as function? But fortunately, they're making some things less onerous. The other gotcha that's going to happen with a lot of folks is if you go to launch some software, the default is that if it's not in the Mac App Store or the developer didn't register for a certificate, it's going to say, you can't open this. It doesn't meet your security preferences. So you need to go into the security preferences and say, I'm a big boy, I'm a big girl, I downloaded software I wanted, so when I double click to launch it, allow me to use it. Because I did find that with some of my photo software, especially from some of the smaller third-party folks that I use and some of the little specialty apps, they wouldn't launch under Mountain Lion until I gave it the security permission. So it's definitely a more cautious OS, and that might affect some people with some of their software tools. So another two things, software, couple updates. You've got a chance now to play with the Nick HDR Efex2. What do you think?
I like it. It's streamlined. I'd like to see more presets. I know you can get some more presets through the Nick community. I like Nick software a lot, but here's the thing. I don't think there's anything better than HDR Efex Pro 2, so I'll just say that. The thing I don't like about Nick is that they have had a constant bug for 2 or 3 years now with regard to authorizations. You have to call in and get something to authorize it. They know there's a problem. They can't fix it. That's one thing that bugs me. The other thing is, as I like to see more of the presets built in. You have more choices. You have to go download presets from places. I think that the market they're trying to attract wants to see more presets. That said, the new tone control features are stunning. I now no longer use any other HDR program.
Okay. Yeah, I've got it sitting there. I've been trying to use the Photoshop one a little bit more just because I'm trying to push it and get more out of it. And I think that it's very nice. but I do have to admit I love HDR effects, and I shot a bunch of HDR on my trip. I got a chance to play with another software tool. I don't know if you've heard of this, Digital Film Tools Film Stocks. Have you seen this yet?
No, I use some of their stuff, but I haven't seen that one.
This one's a pretty cool set. If you like presets, they've got basically almost 300 presets that basically simulate Agfa, Fuji, Kodak, Polaroid, all these different color black and white stocks, and they're really good. And there's also a bunch of stylized ones. So it's not the over the top, like the sort of the phone app, the Instagram looks. These are just really good presets that allow you to simulate the color and the response, the curves and the saturation that we have. And I think this is really cool. Originally I discovered this in the DFX plugin from Tiffin. There was a scaled down version, but this is a side product that actually has a whole bunch more options and a curve thing. So I've been playing with this a lot, and I've been very happy, sort of going back to some of my traditional film shooting to see some of that responsiveness there. So I think software is good. It's been fun. There's a lot of new things coming out. We've got Photoshop World coming up. We got Photo Plus Expo coming up. So I think it's a good time for people to go out and play. Use the upgrading to the operating system to maybe upgrade your software and your workflow. Any other? Go ahead.
Oh, don't forget, this is a Photokina year.
Yeah.
And, so that means we might see some new stuff. I'm most excited about the new Canon 2-400 on the hardware side. Nikon's had one for a while. I never really liked the Nikon one. It was slow to focus and very big and heavy. The Canon is said to be more than a pound lighter and has a built-in 1.4 teleconverter, I might add.
Nice.
So I'm betting it costs like $1 bazillion, though. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to see some new software announcements, I think, that have a lot to do, Rich, with tighter integration of social media and the photo stuff. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And we're seeing just a little hint for instance, in the new Mountain Lion OS, there's a lot more Facebook or stuff that's built right in. Twitter extensions are now built into Safari. By the way, do you know that you can share your notes now with Mountain Lion, which is like one of the things that always drove me completely crazy, is that if I had notes on one computer, I couldn't get them to any other computer without individually copying each note and emailing it to myself.
Yeah.
There's I think we're going to start to see a lot of tighter integration. And what's really going to be interesting to me is to see like who wins the big battle, because we have a new CEO at Flickr. A lot of people in the photo community love Google+. A lot of other people in the tech community say Google+ is the most overhyped, over-marketed, over whatever in the world. Lots of people think that the numbers Google puts out there are not even close to true in terms of users.
Well, I was going to say, both Twitter and Facebook are showing pretty impressive growth. So
Twitter is, now there's big talk. Twitter is going to be purchased by Apple, and if that happens, woo. I mean, who knows? They'll either screw it up royally or make it better. So far, every single thing that Apple's tried to do with this regard to social networking has just been a giant sucking sound on the stock. Yeah, that was horrible. I don't even know if I want them to buy Twitter. I'm torn because I like Twitter a lot. I think we're going to see a lot more social media integration. But what I hope we don't see, frankly, and I know I'm going to get hate mail for this, but please, I have been Instagrammed to death. I'm over it. You should get over it too. It's like, come on. I mean,
well, Facebook bought it, so it'll be interesting to see how they roll that in.
Good. They'll screw it up. Then I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and actually, pretty soon I'll have some news to share on that front. But yeah, I've been paying very close attention to social and photo sharing. I think it's interesting where it's going, especially as we're seeing all of these devices collapse. So cloud computing and photography seem to actually finally be lining up with this idea that as I take pictures, they become easy to share. And it's not like, oh, let me stop, let me think, let me share that. It's just becoming more intuitive. So it's good. Now, the last thing I'd throw out there, and this is going to sound like a rant for a moment, but as it's getting easier and easier to share pictures, and it's getting better and better on that front, could we please see an improvement on the quality of the respect we show each other when we're looking at each other's pictures? More than cool pic or you suck. It's just amazing the quality of feedback. I've been putting more and more stuff out there, and it seems like the general ability of people to express even a polite critique has degenerated into, I don't know, like YouTube is almost like better than what's out there, and that's scary.
Well, Rich, you actually read comments?
Yes, I know.
That's like the number one rule. I don't read comments. I never read comments. It's a cesspool. That's why I turned them off in Photofocus. Years ago, when I turned off comments in Photofocus, everybody said that'll be the death of that site. All we've done is triple our audience since then. And I get regular emails from people who say, thank God I don't have to wade through a bunch of crap from wannabes who know nothing about nothing telling me I'm great or wrong or whatever. They don't even care. Listen, I think this social sharing thing is generational. I think guys my age, I'm still into broadcasting. I'm sorry. I still broadcast. I say stuff, lots of people listen. I get feedback from about 100 people I trust, and I can't deal with more than that. I don't know how the young kids can deal with tens of thousands of inputs. I can't.
That's kind of why I actually like Facebook, even though their photo sharing is so terrible. Because
they just changed that,
it's getting better, but still terrible. But
did you see the very new interface that just happened?
Define very new, like today.
Like in the last 2 days.
I thought so, but I'll take a look again.
Yeah.
But what I do like is, when I post it to my private Facebook page, it's like, oh, here's 500 people I respect. And 15 of them reacted and said what they liked or didn't like. That I like. So I like this idea of smaller, closed communities where you can get feedback. But I'm just amazed. And I think today what really hit it on the head for me was I was looking at a video tutorial by somebody I respect. Years and years of photography experience. And, major, probably has 60 magazine covers for a major publication. And the feedback and the criticism being levied at him by, 19 to 25-year-olds who were giving him critiques with big words. I'm just like, wow.
I know. See, that's why I just don't, people say I'm arrogant because I think I'm better than them. It's not that I think I'm better than them. It's just that I'm going to do what I want to do, because I think that the real problem is people don't have their own sense of style of what they want to accomplish. When you're old like me, I know what I want to accomplish, and that's what I'm going to do. It's not going to be right for everybody. So it's not that I think I'm better than anybody. It's just that I don't care what they think about what I do, because I'm doing what I want to do. They either enjoy it or they don't. It's a big world. Move on. And what can you imagine Ansel Adams going, well, maybe I should get some feedback on Moonrise over Hernandez just to make sure. It's like he had a style. He did his style. There were people that appreciated it. There are people who didn't. I think that's the way it should be. You should have, there's such a concentration on new that people forget about being you. I talk about that all the time. You got to be yourself. And in being yourself, you can just accept the fact that at least half the people out there will think you suck. And that's okay. That's their opinion. They can think whatever they want. It doesn't have to impact you or what you do. You can keep doing what you do until you find the right audience. And that's the secret, Rich. You talked about it just a few seconds ago. You probably said one of the most profound things that's been said on the show in a long time. Sharing your photos with a circle of people you trust and respect makes a whole lot more sense to me than just plastering it out all over every possible network so that people who are, trolls and weirdos and folks you don't care about think they have a right to come in and say something, because there are folks out there that live for that. And you nailed it on the head. I think you should share with trusted networks. I won't deal with anybody who's using some fake screen name or whatever. Unless I know who they are, I won't even read it. I don't even care. If you're Star Wars 189, I don't care what you think. If you're Joe Thompson and I know who you are and you're verified and you're a real person, then I do care what you think, to the point that we'll have a dialogue. But it doesn't mean I'm going to change what I do because you don't like it.
Well, and you could definitely do that on Google Plus by sharing just with a particular circle, or even doing a hangout on a photo and having a critique. So
now, see, I do think that Google Plus does have a slight edge there. I agree with you there. I will say that Google Plus is the only place that I allow comments on any of my stuff. It's the only place that I engage in comments, because generally It's been respectful, and the people who've sort of shepherded it to its current place have all been our friends and significant people that we trust and know. People like Trey Ratcliffe and Scott Kelby and Guy Kawasaki, and folks in our industry that are already established and who have authority. And that's the thing that we're missing on the internet, Rich. Everyone's like, well, you should take everybody's opinion equally. No, if you're not a trained brain surgeon, I am not interested in your opinion on brain surgery. Thank you. I think we need to have authority. And if some guy who's taken 6 pictures in his life wants to come critique, Ansel Adams, I'm just not interested in what he has to say at all. I want to have some authority. I want to see, if I want help with my golf swing, I'm going to go find somebody, like Tiger Woods. He's got authority. He's won more Masters championships than anybody else except for one guy. So I'm looking for people who are there. You are one of the best video guys I know. If you say use XYZ product, it carries a lot of weight with me. If Star Wars 189 says use XYZ product, it carries no weight with me. And I think we've gotten into this culture where, I don't know, for some reason, everybody's opinion is supposed to be treated equally, and I think it's crap. And I get a ton of hate mail for saying it, but I'm sorry. You get to have authority where you have expertise and nowhere else.
Well, to that end, I want to throw out 2 other guidelines, because there's been a bunch of people that I've actually met through Twitter that I didn't have any relationship with prior, but that we regularly engage each other, even with a limited character count, respectfully. Like people that over time have just, engaged or commented on things or reached out in a helpful, polite way, sometimes to respond and add useful information or ask a question. And there's actually been genuine relationships I've forged through social media with people either I only met in passing at a trade show or that I never met, but it's all because they treat it like, hey, you know what? Even though I may have a limited character count, I've got the benefit of anonymity here, I'm going to talk to this person like we were face to face with each other, and I'm not going to just try to be, boastful or tear them down or be overly critical. If I don't like something or if I want to offer a critique, I might ask or question, or, it's not that let's be nice to everybody, but I'm amazed at how many people forget that a lot of these people that you're fighting with, or a lot of these people that you're doing, you're going to cross paths with these people, either as employers or as jobs or as clients. And so I'm just sort of depressed, I guess, with how social media and photography has devolved into online whining and fighting. I'm glad to see that Google Plus has it right. I'd like to see that branch into other sites. But I guess the big thing I'd say out there is, try this for the next 3 months. When you do post on social media, pretend you're saying it to the person's face and see if that won't change your tone, and then you'll also get better answers back, and you'll be amazed at how it builds in. I've picked up tons of work. I'm amazed at the amount of new business that's coming in from people saying, oh, so-and-so recommended you, and I track it down. It's like, well, that's one of my Twitter followers. It's like, even the people that I'm talking to might not be hiring me, but they're recommending me to others, and it's all because you respond respectfully.
I agree. I tend to give what I get. If I get snark, I give snark. If I get respect, I give respect. And I have made a couple of really close friends over Twitter, which is phenomenal to me. Anytime you can make a friend, it's great. And there are people that I've grown to respect over Twitter, but they tend to be people who use their real names. They tend to be people that publish their content in a way that it's clear that it's theirs, it's transparent. And I have little time or patience for those who just want to go out and argue for, the sake of argument, which seems to be, frankly, the bulk of what's going on. And I don't know about you, Rich, but I'm kind of busy.
Yeah. Well, speaking,
I don't have time to even respond to all the emails. If I just read every email I got and every tweet I got, that would take 26 hours a day. So you have to start to filter at some point in time if you want to have a life. And I got cars to race and stuff. So I can't be doing this all the time.
Well, and on that note, I think we're at a good point to sort of wrap up the show. So a lot of great topics this week, Scott. I really appreciate you joining me. And we're going to be getting together really soon here out in Vegas at Photoshop World. So hopefully those of you guys who are coming out to that show, we can get a chance. If you live in the Vegas area and you're not coming to the conference, still register for that show floor pass. There's lots of classes on the show floor, and hopefully we'll have that Smug Mug meetup. I'd like to thank you for joining, Scott. Where can people keep in touch with you and find out more?
I'm on Twitter at Scott Bourne, SCOTTBOURNE, and of course, along with you, every day or so at photofocus.com, where I post stuff on photography and you post stuff on photography, and where people can find more information on the kind of subjects we're talking about. I am on the Google Plus. I have no idea how to tell you how to find me there, but I'm there. I guess you just search for my name. I've got like 6,000 followers. It's ridiculously small, but I tend to do a little better on Twitter. But I'm like a rash. I'm everywhere.
Yep, and I'm trying to be a little more active on Google Plus as well. But you're welcome to look me up on Twitter or Facebook. There's pages on both, and I appreciate people connecting and sharing information. So that's always great. And we'll be in touch more soon. We'll be back in 10 more days with a new episode. And in the meantime, I know, Scott, you're going to be traveling out to skip summer school. So hopefully you'll come back with some new ideas and some new gear that you've gotten a chance to look at while you're out there. Anything else to tell folks about?
Nope. We'll just see you on the next episode of Photofocus.
Great. Thanks for joining, everyone.